Good afternoon, my name's Janette Hughes and I'm Programme Manager for the Living It Up programme in Scotland. Living It Up was part of the Dallas programme in the UK and had the largest consortium membership. What we set out to deliver was a digital self-management hub, and what I'd like to take you through just now is the journey that we've been on for the last 3 years. The ambition for Living It Up was developed in 2012 at the start of the journey, and it was fairly ambitious. The UK Innovate programme set out the Delivering Assisted Living at Scale programme and objectives, which was really to stretch the boundaries, not just to look at health, but to look at well-being and health, and actually look at the prevention agenda as much as the health issues that we have today. And Scotland grasped that and wrote a very compelling and ambitious bid, which we named Living It Up. And the reason the name of Living It Up was so important is that we wanted to make it upbeat. We wanted to appeal to the over 50 population, so not just those that had a health issue, but those that were getting older, still working, looking after people, but still healthy and active, and actually wanted to remain healthy and active for as long as possible. So what Living It Up did was actually start to look at models that had been used throughout other service industries. If you look at travel, if you look at finance, if you look at the way people use digital tools today in their everyday life, health and care is one that was neglected. It's one that certainly looked at more traditional ways and service models and didn't fully embrace and encourage citizens to get involved in actually developing services that were digital and actually changing systems to a more digital and engaging service. So Living It Up's ambition was really to transform healthcare and well-being for the citizens of Scotland over the age of 50, looking at models that they were already engaged with, that they were already comfortable with. There was a couple of key principles within the Living It Up model that's really important to remember as we set off on the journey in 2012. One was the use of familiar technology. What we wanted to do is look at how do we use assets that people already have, whether it be a skill or a technology asset, rather than imposing a technology and gadget that they weren't familiar with. The other important principle was we wanted to include community members in the design of the Living It Up service. So rather than it being a top-down approach, we very much wanted a bottom-up approach, and we embraced the whole co-design, community engagement and agile development with the community. Living It Up actually spanned 5 geographic areas. We took in a mixture of rural and urban populations. So if you actually look at Scotland, the 5 main areas, some being very rural like the Western Isles, like Highland and Moray, and then some being much more urban like Lothian and Forth Valley. The reason for that is when you talk about scalability, you've got to consider the scalability in the rural and the urban setting and make sure that we were designing a service that actually could grow and scale up to the whole of Scotland. We also at the same time wanted to help facilitate and build the care and health integration agenda and really enable citizens and care and health workers to develop tools that would last and would be built on strong foundations for the future. Really self-management and prevention being the key aspects. So as I mentioned in the introduction, Living It Up for the UK Innovate project was actually the largest consortium. Living It Up had a consortium of 32 partners, and as you'll see if you're following the slides, it was actually made up of 2 aspects. The first was service innovators, and you could describe them as health boards in Scotland, local authorities in Scotland, people that were creative in their thinking around service innovation, so Glasgow School of Art, Carers Scotland and the Long Term Condition Alliance were really key in driving the community engagement within that service innovation sphere. We also had other advisors that helped us with the more pragmatic programme approaches like Ernst & Young. On the other side of the sphere, we had technical innovators, and again, they weren't common technical companies. Some of them you would imagine should have been in a health and wellbeing project, like Philips, like Atos, but others were quite unusual. We had TV production companies, we had STV, which is a big broadcast organisation in Scotland. We had small to medium-sized enterprises, again engaging at a software level and a digital level to design a platform for us. So really the ambition was to obviously transform health and care, but also bring in a load of partners that actually could think differently, think from different perspectives, people that are actually maybe working in other areas and other industries that could actually bring approaches and methodologies that's actually working really well for them and converge all of that together. I make that sound easy, but it's actually, that was a real challenge to develop that consortium and people working together. The most important people that obviously out with the 32 key contractual partners was actually the real people that we had on the ground. Through our community engagement work, we touched around 4,000 people face to face, and by the end of the programme we were touching over 15,000 people within the Living It Up digital service that we had developed. And this was very much person-centred, so it was focused on what does the person want, what's their key challenges, but equally what's their key opportunities for them to flourish, to shine and to develop within their community as they grew older. So that really summarises who was involved. As I said, the community engagement and the co-design, co-creation process was the key foundation for Living It Up. We started the process mid to late 2012, and we established a core working team that actually drove that element forward. They were made up of Glasgow School of Art, Carers Scotland, and the Alliance in Scotland, who look after people with long-term conditions. Now, what they brought to the table was a new way of thinking. They certainly broke through the traditional blinkered thinking for health and care workers. And that's not to say that health and care workers don't want to be creative and don't want to innovate, but often their key skills and sometimes their constraints don't allow them to actually do that. So the community engagement team, the creative team within Living It Up, actually helped break that open. And what they really developed was a methodology to fulfil the ambition of Living It Up, which was to transform health and care into a digital self-management hub for communities around Scotland. The process and the methodology used really started off at ground level. As we said, it was a bottom-up approach. We sent the community engagement team with the local teams into communities to start a conversation. And that conversation was a positive, upbeat conversation. We developed tools to engage with them, tools like what's your hidden talent, what assets do you know of and what assets do you use, what assets do you actually have within your community that you would see playing a part in actually the future of health and care. Then went on to actually establish, was there consistent themes across the rural and the urban areas? Because again, you could have gone to the Western Isles and you could maybe find that there was key themes due to their environment, and then you could have gone to Lothian and it might have been completely different. Now, I would certainly say that actually through the 5 geographic areas, there has been differences, but it was actually incredible what we found. The consistency of what people were asking for and what people were looking into the future with was pretty much the same, and I'll go on to talk about that. So these tools were very engaging. It had never been done in that way before. There was certainly an element of upskilling health and care workers to actually even engage with their users differently, because a lot of the time they have very blinkered ways of actually engaging in that conversation, and a lot of the time the patient and the carer, or the patient and the service provider is quite a stringent relationship. So if we think about what they actually told us and how that then lended itself to co-design and co-develop the Living It Up service and the new service model, one thing they told us was they were happy to do more for themselves. They were happy to contribute to the community. They actually felt as if through the years that they had lost that community spirit of even knowing their neighbours and maybe helping their neighbours had been lost. So that was common in rural and it was common in urban areas. And I think there's the old cliche that people can be lonely in a skyscraper in the centre of Edinburgh, as equally they could be lonely in an island that's pretty remote to Scotland. So more people wanted to do things for themselves. The second thing they said was that when they have a condition, or when maybe a close member of their family have an issue that they then need to care for them, that there's too much information, and the information isn't of a particular understandable type. So one thing that they said was they would like concise, easy to understand information presented. And they wanted also to look at the social aspects, not just the hard medical, clinical aspects of caring for somebody or caring for yourself as you develop a condition. The third thing they said was that they wanted to do more in their community and they wanted to connect to others. And that might mean actually connecting not just face-to-face, but using technology. The over 50 population, as we interviewed them, one of the questions that we did ask them was, would they be willing to use technology? Would they be willing to use whatever gadgets they have in their handbags, in their homes, in their living rooms? And they were very keen on that. And what surprised us was the uptake. Now there is an argument that, you know, the over 80s were struggling a wee bit more with technology, but if you look at the 50s to 60s, a lot of them had smartphones. 60 and above, they certainly had mobile phones. They were maybe Skyping because somebody had bought them an iPad to keep in touch with the grandchildren. So the use of technology is definitely on the rise for that age group. And that, I think, is one of the biggest myths and one of the biggest barriers that people say, oh, they wouldn't really use technology or they don't really use digital tools. More and more, they are using digital tools to engage and connect. The other thing they said was that they wanted to, if they were presented with a condition, a health condition or a care condition, that they wanted to understand it and have access to tools that would maybe enable them to live in their community, to live in their home, and to become more independent than traditional methods would have allowed. So that really took us to the point of bringing all of that information back. Understanding the co-design doesn't finish just with the insight, that actually you need to then develop further engagement with them when you actually have an idea of what you're going to build. So that co-design methodology brought the insight back. We saw common themes. Then, stretching the common themes, we started to do paper prototyping. So again, bringing groups back, and they were really encouraged by that, because a lot at the start of the process, when we said to them, come and help us design this new service, you know, we want to get your views. I think they thought, oh, this is great, people are asking me what I want, but then they didn't actually think they would then be invited back to participate once again in actually developing the service. So we did a lot of paper prototyping and activity with them, and the really exciting part for them was maybe the third or fourth time we would go back and bring the groups together, because then actually it was becoming a reality. Between 2013 and early 2014, we actually started to technically develop the Living It Up platform based on all the insights from the community engagement team and the local partnership areas on actually what the service would look like technically and from a user perspective. And that really excited them. So I actually think as well, one of the lessons is there's an upskilling of the community to be part of the service design team, which they didn't realise before. So if we think, what did Living It Up actually deliver and where has it got to today in 2015? Well, we have delivered 4 services that reflects the insights and reflects the engagement and conversations that we had with the real people living lives every day in the rural and urban areas of Scotland. The first one is the Shine tool, and the Shine tool reflects on what people said, that they wanted to be regarded as an asset, not a liability as they got older. So what Shine allows them to do is actually go in and uncover maybe what they were interested in the past but didn't have enough time to actually take on. So they would go through a quiz, and at the end of that quiz there was 8 questions, and it was very pictorial. So again, the user interface was designed by the users. So you chose pictures. At the end of it, you were presented back with...
Sorry. We go chose pictures.
Okay, so and at the end, so they chose pictures, and at the end of it, they were presented back with what would be a good match for them. So they might have said they were interested in hill walking, they might have said they were interested in caring for others, volunteering opportunities, and at the end, we actually then partnered with the Alliance, who has the ALICE database, to draw out opportunities local to them. So again, going back to what people asked us for, they wanted things within their community, not things that were very far away from them. So presenting that back, it could have been a bake group, it could have been a yoga class, it could be, do you know what, there's 2 volunteering opportunities at your local dementia group. So please get involved, next steps. And on top of that, we did videos about how to join groups, because a lot of the time the co-designers said it's great when somebody gives us something and refers us, or if we can take a friend, but a lot of the time they weren't confident enough just to go to that group. So again, trying to break down that barrier digitally to actually allow them to get more information about the group before they even got there. So the Shine tool is really about community capacity building, getting more socially connected, and obviously we know the benefits of that at any age, but particularly for older people that maybe have lost a partner and loneliness, etc., sets in. The second tool that we developed is a tool called Discover. And again, Discover looks at locally, what do you need? And it could be, again, related to a service, or it could be related to a group activity, and it allows you to search, it allows you to view that activity and dive a wee bit deeper into the information about what's available to you locally. The third tool is about connecting you up, and if you look at both rural and actually urban, a lot of the time, a lot of older patients were spending time travelling to appointments. And that appointment might only take 10 minutes by the time they actually get to the consultant or the doctor to see, or the nurse. So there was a lot of time spent, maybe especially from the islands of Scotland, where they would maybe have to get on a bus, get on a boat, get on a bus again, and get to Glasgow for an appointment that would last 10 minutes. So what we introduced as part of the Connect offering was access and easy access to video conference facilities. Now that would be activated by the health or the care person to say, do you know what, next time we can do this by video. Similar to Skype, but we use Cisco Jabber for that facility. And that was really helpful for people that maybe had recurring appointments. And it was really helpful for staff because they didn't have to travel as much if they had to go and visit them. The other thing that we found with that when we ran some pilots was that actually staff members might go into a house and then their expertise maybe was exhausted because it was a particular area that somebody had engaged them in. But they could then go back to somebody back at base and say, look, I've got Betty who's showing me this. What do you think? Do you think I should bring her in, or do you think I should do whatever? And that would enable them to make better decisions for patients, so hopefully producing better outcomes. So the connecting part was really important. The other thing Connect did was digitally upskill people. And the reason that was important is, although people said, yes, I'm keen to use technology, they also said that often they didn't know how to do it properly. So they were maybe using parts of their iPad to maybe just Skype their grandchildren, and they didn't realise that there was lots more they could do with it. So what we introduced there was the kind of peer-to-peer Connect videos, and that might be a 60-year-old showing a video of how to get an email address. And although in my generation we've all got email addresses, we find it pretty intuitive how to get one, that generation struggled because they weren't part of that digital revolution. So Connect was all about upskilling, connecting people at a distance by using familiar and enabling technology. The fourth element, which is possibly one of the kind of pillars for health and care, was Flourish. And Flourish was where we gathered lots of information on how to keep people well. And that could have been how to keep somebody well if they're well already, so how do we maintain that well-being, but equally, how do we keep them well if they have a long-term condition. And I'll go on to talk about the new service model that came from that and all the tools that came from it. But what's important to remember, because you may think, oh well, living it up is just about putting some things online and making it easier. There is key differentiators that make it different from just a normal website. It was driven by user needs, so it was very much embracing the co-design and community engagement aspect to develop it, and using agile methodologies to make sure that we didn't go too far and we kept on checking with users that this was going to be useful for them. The other difference is we were trying to use familiar technology, so rather than asking people to buy particular bits of kit, we were asking them to use whatever they had. We also had the facility to have a profile, and as we all know, if you've got Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, you've got a profile. That profile knows what your name is, what your interests are, what age you are, where you maybe live, so therefore can personalise things for you. Living It Up was using the same idea and built a profile behind. The important thing about the profile is it was owned by you, and we're still evolving the profile to maybe even turn into a person-held record that could attach itself to that profile for the use of health and care. The other thing was that we were using familiar internet accounts. So again, Living It Up was using industry best practice standards, things like, do you want to log in with Facebook, do you want to log in with your Google account, and we also were introducing the My account, which if you're 50 to 60 or over, you'll have a My account, and it's really your bus pass, but it's an identification for you that links everything up in the background. The other thing is, Living It Up isn't like any other health and care website. It's much more friendly. The narrative is a lot more welcoming, and it's driven by the users. So all of these tools were really important for the users. On the other side, we were also developing Living It Up so that we could bring in new technology entrants, industry partners. So we've built a platform that allows APIs, open APIs, for other industry partners to connect to and to hopefully roll out their technologies and test their technologies with our user base. So the service interventions, as I spoke about, we actually are now embedding them within the local partnership areas. There's 5 key interventions: video conferencing, consultations, which I've touched on, home health monitoring options for people that have got a long-term condition, the social prescription element, which we can do through Shine and Discover, and other tools like Get Active, which is a gadget quite like or similar to the Fitbit that would be prescribed to you by a doctor and also facilitated by your leisure centre. So we would name that as exercise prescriptions, getting people to be more active, which will produce better outcomes. Also on top of that, we've got the personal care planning tool and the person-held file. And these 2 tools are really embracing the ownership of the person and them feeling empowered to actually lead a healthier life, even if they do have a condition, having more control over that and having insight into what their file contains, what medication it contains, and other elements. One of the biggest outcomes for Living It Up was the new service model that was developed. So the digital platforms developed. On the back of that, there's a service model that's been rolled out through the 5 locations, regions in Scotland. And the important aspect for that and the differentiator for that is that Living It Up was unique because it spanned well-being and health, which was really important to us. And if you think about, if you're a health practitioner or a care practitioner, the top of that pyramid, which you'll see in my slides, that will be the most critical, the most ill, and how do you deal with that cohort? So bringing in chronic case management, there's tools at that level. And there's also tools in the middle level when they're not as critical, but they could be using things like video rehab, planning solutions, experience guides where people share their experiences with one another to aid their condition and understanding of that condition. So one of the most important parts of Living It Up was the ability and is the ability for local authorities, health boards to actually allow people to step off the system but give them a level of self-support that they would be comfortable with. And this is certainly not neglecting the community, but this is trying to empower the community with tools, digital tools that enables them to live as independent a life as possible. So the Living It Up programme in 2015 delivered much of the outcomes and ambitions it set out to. It was a fairly ambitious project and we covered a lot of ground. We introduced new methodology, new service models, a digital platform that can evolve and hopefully scale up for much of Scotland, and a sustainability offering that can offer Scotland a future role in developing health and care in one place for a community that has designed it from the bottom up. So you may think by watching this that Living It Up is a website and it's got lots of things on a website, but Living It Up is more than a website. What Living It Up tried to do and is doing in the local community is giving information, inspiring people, giving them ideas, supporting their well-being and health, and building their confidence to actually co-design services within Scotland in the community. However, the leap of faith is when actually the users of the digital service actually take the step to build their lives as part of the community, face to face, doing more social interactions, changing their behaviour, changing their lifestyle, and actually thriving within their community to build stronger communities for Scotland in the future. Thank you.